Hello, I'm John Stifer, representative of the Shaw Media Editorial Board. Today's Friday, September 4th, and we're pleased to begin a joint interview with candidates of the 65th and 66th Illinois State House in the November 2020 election. I'm joined by reporter Cassie Buckman from Shaw Media and the Daily Herald's Jim Bauman and Susan Sarkowskis. We welcome the candidates in both districts, incumbent Alan Skillicorn and challenger Suzanne Ness, and incumbent Dan Ugaste and Martha Paschke.
And Alan is only on the phone, so you don't see his face today.
But he's with us. All right, the first question. COVID-19 will have an impact on the state's finances. What specific measures will you push to make sure the state does not fall further into debt? And we'll start with Representative Dan Ugaste.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I believe there are a number of things we need to do in order to make certain the state doesn't fall further into debt. And that is primarily by promoting sound business measures to have businesses expand and locate within Illinois at a time when we all know that the economy is about to hit a big downturn. We need to make certain we pass items such as workers' compensation reform that I've been pushing for a number of years to help businesses take care of their workers, definitely protect the workers still, but yet save money. And not only will this help businesses save money and promote further business in the state, it's also going to save the state money, and it's going to save every local unit of government money. And by doing that and enacting policies, looking at our regulations and saying, okay, what do we need to protect our workers, to take care of our citizens, yet what can we ease on business so that the regulatory scheme's not so large and the administrative costs aren't so much that they don't want to be in Illinois, that they're looking to locate elsewhere or expand, if they're going to expand elsewhere, to bring them to the state and focus on items like that and other business measures that the Republicans have been focused on. We helped bring, such as the data center incentive package the last spring, and items of that type to actually build upon the base here in Illinois, increase taxes, and that way it's also going to provide for more jobs and increase revenue stream that way as well from income taxes from the general population.
And now the challenger in the 65th district, Martha Paschke.
Hi, thank you. I absolutely agree that addressing our budget is going to be a significant problem that we're going to have to face and deal with. And I don't believe that we should do it on the backs of the middle class. And I don't believe that we should do that at the cost of cutting critical services like domestic violence shelters and other social services. On top of the services that the state does need to provide, we now have the additional cost of all the COVID-19 related issues like providing testing, PPE, and all of those things associated. So we will need to be compassionate and responsible with every decision made in the budget. And I honestly don't think that it's unreasonable to ask the federal government to step up and help. We are a state that pays more to the federal government than we get back from the federal government. And I think it's absolutely within the lines of expectations to ask for assistance in this situation.
All right, and now the 66th district, Representative Alan Skillicorn.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up a key item to governing Illinois. And again, this is Alan Skillicorn, and I want to let people know that I'm the person that has filed the only balanced budget that didn't require a tax increase in the past decade. So this is something that I can spend a lot more than 2 minutes talking about. I can spend a lot more than 2 hours talking about this. But let's just focus on the basics. The majority of our budget, over 90% of our budget, is in four crucial areas. And that's going to be pensions, it's going to be K through 12 education, that's going to be Medicaid, and that's going to be the actual payroll of state employees. Those 4 budget items take up over 90% of it. So what I would do is focus on just a couple things. One of it, we need to focus on spending a little bit less money in those areas. So Medicaid is our #1 driver of expenses in Illinois. Did you know that there are many, many people that are on the Medicaid rolls that don't live in the state of Illinois? That's true. There are people who don't live in the state of Illinois but are collecting Medicaid checks. There are people that are going to doctors that do not have a photo ID, so we don't actually know who's showing up to the doctor and receiving those benefits. These are key items of reform, and that we can actually cut expenses in those areas. Pension reform is an absolute must. That's our 2nd biggest driver of our budget, and it's going up every single year. So there's many, many things we can do that. I have specific proposals of how to do that. I've got a pension a toolkit that would actually bring that back in line in just a decade instead of letting it spiral out of control. So those are some of the things we could do. But then there's another thing we could do is we can unleash our economy. Today, jobs numbers came out. We're seeing a drastic reduction in our nation of unemployment. Well, a drastic reduction in unemployment gives us a V-shaped recovery. Instead, Illinois usually likes to have more regulations and more restrictions for jobs. So we always see a delay in our economic recoveries based on our surrounding states. What we need to do is reverse that trend. We need a V-shaped recovery. We need it now. We need to unleash the economy. And unfortunately, some of our same measures for COVID are basically the same thing we've been doing things for decades. We've been slowing down our economy. We've been restricting jobs. We've been restricting small businesses. We need to open up Illinois and fix those things. We need to, there's so much suffering, not only in unemployment, but in small businesses. We need to get these people back to work. We need to have them take the necessary precautions, but to actually get back to work and open up again.
The challenger in the 66, Suzanne Ness.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Ness. Thank you very much for having me today. So a lot of good things said already that I agree with. Some of them I agree with and would support. Some other areas that I think are potentially places to look. First of all, my first place to start is to make sure that the federal government reimburses and does their part of this effort. And not that it's about blaming, but if the federal government had stepped in and treated this like a national crisis that it was and that it deserved, our businesses would be open, kids would be back in school, and we wouldn't see some of the suffering that we're seeing now. So with the lack of that coordinated leadership and effort to mitigate this at the beginning when it first showed up as a crisis in January has left states, Illinois included, having to scramble and work on our own to solve the problem. Second to that, I believe that there are regional efforts that can be done. We've done this in McHenry County by partnering with Lake County around some of our efforts and initiatives, whether that's restoring McHenry County or resuming businesses up here, working with our other regional area so that we can come together and share resources, create efficiencies, create access for people to access the services given to them, and make sure that they have what they need, those tools that they need. I also would want to look at the budget as a whole. We just looked at our budget in McHenry County yesterday, and things weren't as bad as was initially predicted. While retail sales were down, online sale tax was up. So, until we know the full effect of what we're going to be dealing with, it's hard to say specifically what we should do. So those are some other places that I would look. And then, I would add lastly to that is, I agree with my opponent actually on this, that we have some key areas in the state that need some serious transform, and during times like the change that we're in, it's a great time to look at ideas that might not have been looked at a couple of years ago, but that are certainly ones now that look more viable given the state of the way things are currently. So I would want to be a part of those conversations to help bring that forward.
Very good. I'm Jim Bauman. I'm the managing editor of the Daily Herald. By the way, this is Sue Sarkauskas. She's a reporter for us. So my question is kind of a two-parter. Property taxes continue to go up. and be the primary source for public education. What should be done to manage those rising taxes? And is the graduated income tax proposal the answer to that? And why or why not? Let's just go in reverse. So Suzanne Ness.
I just had a feeling you were going to do that, so thank you.
There you go.
I'm Suzanne Ness. So great question. And certainly this is something that I'm hearing while I'm talking to voters, which we've been calling, not knocking on doors because of the pandemic. And you're right, this is a big concern for them. So 2 parts to that question. I'll answer the first one. Property tax reform. It has to happen. McHenry County has some of the highest property tax rates, not just only in the state, but in the country as well. And part of that is a number of things. We rely heavily on property taxes to fund a lot of things we do here in Illinois. So before COVID started, there was a task force that looked at some property tax reform ideas. And I read the report. There were some good things that came out of that. COVID slowed everything down. So I'm anxious to see those ideas back on the table, looking forward to the spring session where maybe some of those things can be done. So looking for reform, how we assess properties, looking at corporate assessments and commercial assessments, and finding some different ways to expand how we fund things in Illinois and not rely so heavily on property owners. We have 115,000 taxing parcels in McHenry County. How do we grow that? That would be the only way, if we weren't going to actually address other forms of reform, to look at increasing that here in McHenry County, just as an example. Your second question was about the fair tax. So first of all, voters are going to get the chance to decide on this, and it's not necessarily a General Assembly issue at this point, but I think that there's a bigger issue in front of it, and that is public trust. And when I talk to voters about this issue, it isn't so much that they don't agree that we need tax reform. We're one of only a handful of states that has a flat tax rate. So I think most people agree that some kind of graduated tax rate makes sense. But what's missing in Illinois, as opposed to perhaps other places, is a lack of public trust. And every elected official bears the burden of that, regardless of which side of the aisle you sit on and what role you have in that position. We all bear that. I'm a county board member. I've been there for 2 years. It's part of my job too. So people's biggest fear is that that we won't put bumpers in place to protect that. And so people worry that it's just another way to unleash another taxing part of taxing Illinoisans. So I think that it's necessary reform. It's how we do it that will matter, and it's restoring public trust first. And that's what I would focus on in my role as a state representative.
Okay, I just wanted to get this clear because I read your questionnaire and I didn't see a real direct answer to it. How will you vote in the referendum? Will you vote for the graduated tax?
Personally, how do I feel about the vote? Yes, I support it.
Okay, very good. Representative Alan Skillicorn.
Thanks, Jim. And again, this is Alan Skillicorn. So I firmly believe that we do not need to reinvent the wheel. So let's take a look at what other states are doing. And when I look at the other states, I see 7 states that don't have an income tax, and every single one of those states has lower property taxes than the state of Illinois. Let's think about that for a moment. Is the solution higher taxes, or is the solution something else? So when we look at that problem, and I look specifically at property taxes, I see the biggest driver of property taxes is pensions. So over the past 10 years, 60% of every property tax hike has been directly related to pensions. So if we address the pension situation, not with a task force, which just gives out phony political answers, we need to have solutions, not lip service. So what we need to do is institute a constitutional amendment, just like the state of Indiana did. Again, let's not reinvent the wheel here. They have this 1, 2, 3 property tax cap. So residential properties are capped at 1%, commercial capped at 2%, and agriculture capped at 3%. If we did that same here, we would see drastic reductions in property taxes for the people who live in the state of Illinois, businesses, and forthright. And then we have to address pensions. So I have a very specific pension reform package, and it isn't just one bill, it's a whole package of bills. And what we need to do is control those costs, bring those costs down, and instead of leveraging taxpayers that pay for these false promises on the pensions, we need to make sure that it is definitive and that it is something that we can afford. And that's how we reflect this. Now, on the specifics of the graduated tax, again, not reinvent the wheel here. Let's look at what other states are doing. If we look at Missouri to our southwest, you'll see that the average person there pays significantly more under their graduated taxes. Is the graduated tax something to give people tax relief, or is it a tax hike? Well, look at Minnesota. So as little as a couple making $37,000 a year, they would pay higher taxes than the same couple in the state of Illinois. This is no panacea. This is nothing, has nothing to do about lowering taxes for anyone. This is a tax hike, and that is really the truth of the matter. So is it going to be a solution? No, it is not. It's just going to mean more people are going to leave the state of Illinois, and frankly, that is not what we need. We need to have more people living here. We need to have more business here. We need to have more jobs here. We need to have more commerce here, and that's how we fix these problems. And going forward, we have to vote no on this, but we have to fix pensions, and we have to hit property taxes, or we're going to continue to be a net exporter to the rest of the country.
Okay, thank you. Martha Paschke.
Thank you. Yes, Martha Paschke, running in the 65th. First part of the question, property taxes. Yes, absolutely. Education, the cost of education is the biggest driver for our high property taxes in Illinois. And that is, it's very clear that the reason for that is that we are the worst state in the nation for the amount that our state funds education. We fund education the least of any state in this country at around 40%. Many people will talk about leaving the state to go to other states with lower property taxes. And they're not looking at the fact that those states that have lower property taxes actually fund education better than we do. So yes, Illinois absolutely needs to address the funding of education. To do that, we need revenue. And so I do absolutely believe that the graduated tax is one modality to get there. We know that our current tax structure unfairly burdens those earning the least in our state. Working and middle class families pay a larger portion of their wealth in state and local taxes than those earning the most. They actually pay double the portion of their total wealth in taxes when you consider state and local taxes. Before taxes, the wealthiest 1% in our state earn 137 times that of the lowest 20% income earners in our state. After taxes, that jumps to 149 times as much. So yes, our current tax structure is unfair. We do need to level it out and make it more fair. And that will bring us some revenue to help address the state's funding of education. We can look at research, and we can see clearly in states that have graduated tax structures that the fears of those who oppose it don't end up playing out. Wealthy people don't leave those states, the tax brackets don't get expanded, and taxes don't go up. There's research on this. The Center for Tax and Budget Accountability has it available for anyone who's interested. So yes, I absolutely support it. I do believe it is a necessary part of bringing better funding for education and providing actual relief for property tax in our state.
Thank you. Representative Dan Ugaste.
Thank you, Jim. Dan Ugaste, running for state representative for re-election in the 65th district. Regarding property taxes, I couldn't agree more. We need absolute relief in this state. Every door that I go to, every taxpayer I talk to, every person that I know within the state, not just my district, believes we need property tax relief. Everyone believes their property taxes are too high. I was part of that commission to look at property taxes. Unfortunately, it did not come out with any final report that both sides actually had a part on. So what I did was I scrambled, and before the deadline, which wasn't but maybe 3 weeks away after the time passed for the second or for the extension on the Property Tax Commission report, I went ahead, put together 6 bills that would bring property tax relief to the state of Illinois. I was hoping to move on them during the spring session. Unfortunately, as was pointed out, the spring session was cut short, but we did go back. And those could have been 6 bills that we looked at to help bring relief to the people of the state of Illinois, especially at this time when the pandemic's crippling our economy. People are worried about where their next check's coming from, and we could have started on actual property tax relief for the people of this state, and we should have. And I'm looking to get reelected to go back and keep working on that, because this is something I believe we must do. We must do this to succeed as a state. We need to create efficiencies wherever possible. Consolidation is part of the answer. It's not the answer solely because of the word consolidation. We need to do it where it makes sense, where we are actually going to save money. And that's part of what my 6 bills would have addressed. Do I believe the graduated tax is the answer to all this? Absolutely not. Unfortunately, we have a big problem within the state of Illinois. And it's not the revenue that local and state government brings in, it's spending. And what we need to start addressing is the spending side of the equation and creating efficiencies wherever we can. We don't do that at all. I filed a bill to consolidate the controller's office with the treasurer's office. It would have required a constitutional amendment. Couldn't even get it out of Rules Committee. It wouldn't even get a hearing. And the reason for that is it's not politically popular on the other side of the aisle. What we need to do is address these spending things. And you could say, well, it's not going to save that much money. We need to save money wherever we can. If we start doing it that way, it's definitely going to add up. This graduated tax is only going to chase more people, more wealthy people out of the state. And despite what my opponent says, that there's research indicating that that's not the case, talk to the people in the state of New York. New York's going through that very situation right now, and even their governor has been quoted as saying, stop trying to resolve these issues on the backs of the wealthy. It causes them to leave the state. They have the means, they have the wherewithal, and they're going to. They are not going to continue to overpay solely because we refuse to address our spending problems, things like I mentioned before, and especially the pension issue. That is something we definitely have to tackle in this state. So no, I don't believe that the graduated tax is the answer to anything. I believe it's going to do nothing but create more problems and eventually lead to higher taxes on the very people it's purported to help and protect. And I don't think you can trust state government at all in that regard. Even though I've only been there 2 years, there's a history over the last 10 years of income tax increases and that money not going to where we were told it was supposed to go. So I am definitely opposed to it. Don't believe it's the answer. We need to start looking at spending, and we need to start bringing about property tax relief as soon as possible.
Thank you.
All right. AJ Friend's death has highlighted the failings of Illinois' DCFS system. What steps need to be taken to fix that child welfare system? We'll start with Representative Alan Skillicorn of the 66th.
Yeah, great. Start with me. And this is actually a really big one and one that I've been involved in. And the people of McHenry County have been just touched quite a bit about this. And even though AJ did not live in my district, I mean, it was only, like a quarter mile away. So, I mean, I have friends that lived on that street. So that was something that rocked our neighborhoods and our community. And unfortunately, a lot of times DCFS has this wrong track record where they have this idea where they want to push children back into failing relationships, failing families, instead of protecting them. This particular case actually has some significant problems because we had a local person that saw this abuse and, in my opinion, effectively covered it up. The police knew there was a problem, but we had the local investigator push this child back in and effectively make excuses, even though the medical reports were there, and basically coaching the child to say, oh, this happened by the dog, not from the mother. Very unfortunate. and there are blood on many people's hands. But unfortunately, there are over 100 children that have died under DCFS care in the state of Illinois this year. And with the response, the closure to these agencies, the closure to our economy, it's probably going to surge higher than we even imagined. And that is super unfortunate, and the children are suffering. So we need to see a little more accountability in the top of the agency. We need to have a situation where you have people that do not have a personal stake in the lives of children. Effectively, we need to regulate DCFS differently than we regulate the DNV. And unfortunately, that's exactly the problem, is that this agency is run like we run the DNV or something like that. It has to be something that's more local. That has to be more of this care, more of this has to be done through the local agencies. Some of this needs to be, frankly, outsourced to these local agencies instead of underneath the current bureaucratic mess that it is right now. These are not stacks of paper. These are human beings with rights, with challenges, with emotions, and we are not protecting them. And this is something that is a core service of our state. This is not, something else we might debate about. This is something that we need to protect these children. These are under our charge. And if we're not doing that, shame on us. And it has to be a top-down approach, but it also needs the responsibility to go back to the community. And that's why I think some of these local agencies need to have a bigger role. And there has to be a situation where when we get the family court, the police reports cannot be suppressed, and we need to have more trust in the agency. Unfortunately, there is a local person, that person on the Kent County Board, it's a politician that's protected by the local politicians in this, and has led to the direct death of this young man. And that is a big problem. And there are people on this phone call that protect this person. And that blame has to go around, and these people cannot get off with this. And if you are an employee at DCFS, there has to be consequences for ignoring police reports, ignoring medical reports, and releasing children back into situations where they can be harmed.
Suzanne Ness.
Thank you. Suzanne Ness, District 66. I live in Crystal Lake. And so I still see blue ribbons around trees in my community, on my walks and my runs through my district, of people who still carry just the sadness and the grief that this tragedy created here in my community. A little backstory: when I was growing up, we were a foster home. We took special needs kids, actually. And even then, 30-something years ago, the foster care system was broken. The foster care system in DCFS, charged to protect children, has a history of not doing that. There are a number of reasons why. I held a town hall in April of this year, actually, with Anna Muller, Representative Anna Muller, who sits on the chairs of that task force reviewing DCFS. And there are a number of issues related to this particular case, and how do we create more stability and more safety for our children in the state of Illinois and throughout the United States. And a few things I learned through that process, and where I think we need to begin. One is the mission statement, the mission of DCFS to keep family reunification does not put children's safety first. And so that has been part of this whole problem. And so that would be one place that I would start. The second is they're terribly underfunded, or have been historically, though they've made some improvements recently, but they're staffing issues. Investigators come out of college, they don't stay very long. It's a high level of burnout with this particular position. They have increased the number of supervisors and reduced caseloads, which are really good steps. It's not enough. The next thing that has to happen is more community efforts. And in this regard, and the people I've spoken to, which includes our state's attorney here in McHenry County, and a foster parent who lives here in the county that was kind enough to spend some time with me, telling me about her perspective of this issue. We do need more local effort and allowing local jurisdictions to help assist in these cases. Beyond that, trauma training for all first responders, healthcare workers, emergency room workers. That was part of the problem in this case. that the emergency room, they just don't see enough cases of child abuse to know what it looks like when they see it. And so in that, we don't then, who knows, AJ, yes, we know we missed this one, but the bigger question, how many more are we missing? So ensuring that they have the training. If that's I'm curious about like why we can't tap into other jurisdictions where perhaps they have more expertise in that. And we can do telemed and be able to engage. And then I think COVID is bringing some of these opportunities out. So that would be another thing that would have to happen. And, then lastly to that, I would just say that children in the foster care system, there are 2 levels of Medicaid in the state of Illinois. Children are on the lowest rung of Medicaid. They can't even find doctors to treat children, foster kids, because doctors want to get paid and they don't get paid. So even the act of trying to find medical professionals who will see foster children, they end up doing it for free because there's just not enough places. And that's a lack of funding in social services, in mental health services. And my opponent in this race is historic for voting no against anything that goes into helping social services and helping people. So I would say that those are all, this is not a simple solution, but those are certainly all things that we can begin to do.
Representative Dan Ugaste.
Thank you. Dan Ugaste, 65th District. Regarding DCFS, I don't doubt that everyone that's there wants to help the kids. The problem is if the focus is primarily on the family, and while I am a supporter of trying to keep families together when possible, the primary consideration has to be the safety and well-being of these children. That's who we have to protect. And, I'd love to say the General Assembly as a whole, and we definitely need to be involved because this is our responsibility and our task, need to address this, but we need to start with the hiring of the people who are going to oversee the system in such a way that they are putting the proper emphasis on what needs to be looked at and keeping these kids safe. And while investigations need to continue into every allegation, making certain they're focused in the right direction and that we do things and take action swiftly and as possible when something is observed and a child is viewed to not be in a safe situation. I'm sure more resources are absolutely needed. More resources to protect these kids, to make certain that the staff at DCFS has everything and everybody they need, and then more resources to help the family as they try and cope through situations and realize problems and need to possibly have their own situations addressed, whether it be mental health, addiction, whatever the problem happens to be, so that they are taken care of. Our biggest problem, though, in the state of Illinois is not that any of us don't want to provide those services to people. Our biggest problem is affording it. And again, we can't just keep looking at spending and spending more. I'm willing to reallocate money. I'm willing to look at saving money in other places, but we have to start that process of saving money somewhere so that we can have the money to spend. The money just doesn't come from nowhere. We have to start working in the right manner and allocating money and prioritizing our spending in such a way that we make certain these children are protected. It's just not something we're doing, unfortunately.
Martha Paschke.
Absolutely. This death of AJ was really tragic. It broke my heart, and it was a wake-up call that we all needed to the very critical underfunding of DCFS. I hope more than anything that this story will continue to spur changes and actions that are so badly needed in this area. I know Governor Pritzker has increased significantly the funding to DCFS. DCFS also has a new director who started on the day AJ died. So there are changes being made. The additional funding that Pritzker has given DCFS has allowed them to hire additional staff, additional investigators, make changes that are necessary, invest in new technologies to upgrade and update their systems to hopefully help prevent similar cases in the future. But I think beyond this, even, it's really important to look at mental health care in our state, treatment for drug addiction. These are really important and urgent matters that need to be addressed. We know that opioid addiction was a significant factor in this case. The majority of DCFS's budget has been focused on family reunification, ensuring that the mental health care and drug treatment, we need to be ensuring that the mental health care and drug treatment is a part of this process going forward. So ultimately, it comes down to the funding. The governor has increased that funding significantly, which is really critical and important. And I would challenge my opponent on his talking about the need for funding in this situation, but not wanting to provide it, not voting for a budget that provides it, and not supporting his words with his actions.
Oh, you're muted, Jim.
I broke my own rule. Thank you, Suzanne. My question is about ethics reform. What do you see as the most important aspects of ethics reform, and how would you go about trying to achieve them? I'm going to go in reverse order with Martha Paschke.
Sure, absolutely. I agree that ethics reform is really important. I think trust has been broken in this state for too many years. Many players have played into this system that's broken the public's trust. I believe that it's important to take a really critical look at the back and forth between lobbying and legislating. I think that that needs to be a part of the conversation. I think it needs to be a bipartisan conversation. I think that we need to hold bad players accountable with tougher fines, even stripping pensions from those who have been found guilty. And I think that, you know, we've already started in this. We've seen the bipartisan commission that's currently investigating the issues with the speaker. We have the committee that was formed before COVID to look at ethics. So there's starts there, and I think we need to continue that. I think it's really important, and I think that what matters most to voters when I'm talking to them is that they understand that somebody running to represent them has absolutely no interests in this other than representing their needs and their values. No outside interests, no corporate interests, just representing their needs and their values as it should be in politics, and we need to get back to that.
You touched on the lobbying issue. Do you believe there should be like a 2 or 3 year cooling off period, or?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, Representative Ugaste, consider that issue as part of the question as well, okay?
Absolutely, sure. As a matter of fact, I have co-sponsored legislation both for 2 and 3 years. I prefer a 3-year period, but if all we can get is a 2-year period, I'll take that because it's better than what we have right now. A legislator should not be able to leave the state house and immediately turn around and start lobbying. It's just not the right way to do things, and we need to put an end to it now. We also need to put an end to lobbyists or state representatives working at lobbyists at other levels of state, local government, not within our state. It's not the proper way to do things. It exerts too much influence on other levels of government because there's a whole host of other things that local government has to work with the state on. So we need to make certain that comes to an end. Statements of economic interest. need to be much more detailed. The judiciary in this state has to answer a far more detailed statement of economic interest than state legislators do. There's no reason that should happen. We should have to answer a very detailed one so that people know where state legislators' interests lie as well. And I find it interesting that those who are supporting the speaker, who has been the person who has kept a heel on real ethics reform in this state for a long time and are being supported by him and having their campaigns run by him, primarily my opponent, are sitting here saying that, yes, we definitely need ethics reform. If we need ethics reform, you can't have the speaker backing you. You have to run independent of them, and you have to be willing to vote for someone else for Speaker of the House. Because when Representative Arroyo was arrested just before the veto session of the last year, the Republicans brought forth a bunch of ethics bills, none of which were acted on. A commission was created. When the pandemic broke, meetings stopped completely. The report was supposed to come out at the end of the month. I think the work was probably nearing completion. But rather than continue to meet via Zoom like this, or ways that other committees have found to meet during that time, it just came to a complete end, and we still don't have a report from that commission. That shows me that the other side, or at least the leadership of that other side, is not serious about ethics reform in this state. And it's something we all obviously desperately need, as we're seeing multiple arrests, multiple plea agreements, and different things from various government officials throughout this state to corruption charges. We have to have ethics reform in the state capitol, and we need it now.
Let me go back to you, Martha. So you do receive financial support from Speaker Maddox, correct?
No, I received support from the Democratic Party.
Okay. What were there
Which
any?
is the same thing.
Please don't interrupt, Al. Was there any strings attached to this in terms of whether you support or don't support ethics reform?
No.
Okay.
None at all.
Very good. Thank you. Suzanne Ness.
Thank you, Suzanne Ness, District 66. So a couple of things that have already been said, obviously I support and agree with, including lobbying and there being a moratorium or a break on time before former legislatures can go and be lobbyists. That includes with other levels of government, because I agree that's been an ongoing plaguing issue in the state of Illinois. And with 7,000 units of government, it's very possible that those get mixed up all the time. The other thing I'd really like to see is much stronger conflicts of interest efforts or initiatives put into the ethics ordinance. So what their jobs outside of being a legislature, a lot of people have other jobs that they do and that they continue to do as representatives, or even maintaining and holding 2 offices at the same time. Those sort of things are all things that undermine the integrity of this body. And so I would like to see stronger reform efforts made in those areas. Also external oversight. You know, there's not a strong enough external oversight. This body oversees itself, and that's not always a good thing, as is attested through my opponent, who was on record of casting 23 votes last year when he wasn't even in Springfield. He was outside of the district campaigning, and there's timestamps on Facebook showing that. So, and when the allegations came out, you know, the response was, well, everybody does that, and I think that's terrible. We have the responsibility to hold ourselves and each other accountable, and to our colleagues. And so he's been there long enough. He knew better. Shame on him for that. So I think that those kinds of issues need more emphasis, and they need to be called out more. And I'm also the ethics liaison to the Ethics Commission here in McHenry County. And so I've been able to be a part of creating this ordinance and getting acceptance for it. And the other thing we've included that I think any ordinance should have is ongoing regular training at a minimum yearly, but maybe more if that's necessary to help people, to remind them of what they're supposed to be doing. So that would be something else I would include. And then lastly to that, I was also instrumental in being able to move the appointments for our ethics commission from the chair of our board to the whole board itself. So now all of the applications for the ethics commission come straight to the administrative services committee, not to one person. And I think that was a very important addition to our ordinance to make it acceptable by everybody.
Thank you. Representative Alan Skillicorn, care to respond to the allegation?
Well, I can just go into my response to the question, because that's really what's pertinent. And we're not going to see ethics reform here while Speaker Madigan is still Speaker in Illinois. We're not going to see ethics reform in Illinois until the newspapers, like the newspapers we're speaking to today, start reporting on these allegations, and actually more than allegations. So, let's go into the lobbyist part. Now, legislators should not moonlight as lobbyists, period. During floor debate, I asked everyone on the House floor to raise their hand if they are a lobbyist. No one had the courage to do so, but when I looked it up, I was able to find people that are registered lobbyists for the city of Chicago. Unfortunately, there's many other local municipalities and smaller levels that do not require registration, and there are dozens of legislators that moonlight as lobbyists. But legislators already moonlight as property tax attorneys. Speaker Madigan is a property tax attorney. We're never going to see real ethics reform, real property tax reform, until Speaker Madigan has to step down. And let's dive into that a little bit more. So I have publicly said that he needs to step down. And when I look back, in just a month ago, when ComEd, they entered that plea deferral, actually the plea deal, the prosecution deferral, and they admitted to bribing Speaker Madigan and supplying patronage jobs to Speaker Madigan. So there is a direct dollar connection, and there's a direct job connection to Speaker Madigan and bribes. This is not something that is an allegation. They admitted to bribing Speaker Madigan. And of course, their attorneys would tell them not to do that, not to, unless they were actually entering into this prosecution deferment. So this is real. So there are candidates that are on this Zoom call that receive direct funding from Speaker Madigan. There is a Madigan campaign staffer on this phone call. And there has to be a significant connection to the ethics reform and those candidates returning that money and returning those campaign staffers. Now, Jim, a moment ago, you asked a question about funding from Speaker Madigan, and the other candidate said that, no, it was not Speaker Madigan, it was the Democrat Party of Illinois. The chairman of the Democrat Party of Illinois is Michael J. Madigan. And shame on you, Jim, for not following up on that question. You knew the answer to that, but you didn't bring it up. And that is really the problem. The media ignores this. We need to see articles on these direct connections. We need to see articles on the money connections. In the 66th district, there are campaign staffers for Mike Madigan marching around. Why is that? Why is it not reported? Now, when I look back and see who circulated petitions for my opponent, I will see, and I can actually bring up some names here. I can see people, let me just bring up the sheet here. I can see people that live in Mike Madigan's district that campaign, or that are out there campaigning for my opponent. I can see people from Chicago and Cook County. I mean, I look at Edward Cobalt, who lives in Mike Madigan's district. I can look up a little bit farther here. Fortunately, my document's freezing up, unfortunately. I see Jacob Johnson from Diversity in Chicago. Why would he drive out from Diversity in Chicago to McHenry County and Kane County to campaign for my opponent? I can see many, many others that are Madigan employees. Now, here's the question. Are these ComEd employees that are part of the bribery scandal? I mean, I would like to see the newspapers report on that, but they're silent. And no wonder Illinois has such a reputation for corruption when we have two candidates on this phone call that take direct money from Speaker Madigan, even though there are real bribery charges on the table. We have campaign staffers on this phone call right now. And Well, how come the newspapers don't report that? I'd actually like to hear an answer from the editors right now.
We're not going to talk about that right now. We're asking you questions.
But you don't think that is a component to Illinois' corruption?
On to the final question. We'll start with Suzanne Ness. What makes you stand out as the better candidate in this race?
I would start with a few things, and one is that part of what brought me into politics is the lack of civility, the degradation of the process in the public service and what it means to be a public servant in America today, and that people have forgotten that of who they represent and who they work for and what really matters to the people that they represent. And so I am a reasonable, thoughtful, compassionate person. I've run a small business. I've raised my children. I've volunteered in my community. I give back in multiple ways. And I truly believe that this is a great place. I think Illinois is a great state. I think the 66 district's a great district. And people leading it should believe in it. They should believe in it and want to see it improve. And leadership, absolutely, how can you lead when you don't believe in the place that you're leading? So for me, it's very simple. It's very simple. It is about wanting to step up, to be a good representative, to be thoughtful, to bring reason and to bring mindfulness back to this role, and to reach out and build collaboration and bridges, not burn them down. So I bring communication skills, facilitation skills, but also heart to this role. And I'm really excited about the honor and privilege of being able to represent my district and my community in Springfield.
All right, Alan Skillicorn, and if you could also address the rumors that you weren't even going to finish running in this race.
Well, the rumors of my demise are greatly exaggerated. And frankly, I don't like politics. I like policy solutions. And that really equals why I'm in this race, is that I'm someone that puts real policy solutions on the table. I mean, I have town halls talking about pension reform. It's probably not a popular subject when so many campaign donors don't want to see that. And I dislike big money in politics, and that's why I'm not taking money from special interests. I am not taking money from legislative leaders or legislative PACs. I say no to that because I don't like that. I think that taints everything. And I'm standing on my policy positions and my serious policy work. There is hardly anyone that submits more bills than I do. There's hardly anyone that does more homework and background on these things. I mean, I'm looking up what other states are doing and how they fix things and then how I can make that work here in Illinois. And that really is why I'm the best candidate for this race. I have serious proposals. I have plans that can fix Illinois. I'm the only person that's actually filed a real balanced budget that doesn't raise taxes in a decade. The only one. And you know what? We need more people that want to have serious discussions and serious policy answers instead of the, speaking out of both sides of their mouths or just giving lip service. I want to see real solutions, and that's why I focused on policies, and that's why I put the politics aside, I put the fundraising aside, I put the special interests aside, because that's not what I'm interested in. The people of Illinois deserve answers.
You closed
your we closed it. We closed it because of COVID, Suzanne. And frankly, we have someone that is working from home, answering phones. I have got another person in Springfield. That's fine. That's good ideas. And we're actually going to save money and in return for that money back to the state. That is doing a great job.
Martha Paschke.
Yeah, Martha Paschke, running in the 65th district. I have been incredibly honored to be in this race, and the biggest honor in this race has been getting to talk to so many voters. I've called over 7,000 voters. I've talked to over 1,000 of them. We've had incredible, engaging conversations. Even people that I might disagree with issues on have appreciated the time that I've taken to spend with them, to listen to what's affecting their lives, and to let them know that I'm in this race only because I want to see families and people in my district thrive. That's all that I want in this race. I'm a mom I'm a teacher. I've worked in women's health. I've worked in mental health. I understand the things that affect people's lives, and I'm willing to work incredibly hard to earn their trust, as I've earned the trust of so many people already. And that means more to me than anything else. I will work hard for them, and they know it, because I've spent my time reaching out to them, having hard conversations. I've spent the pandemic time having difficult conversations with community leaders on issues that matter to people as they're going through this. We've covered mental health, we've covered faith practice, we've covered education, we've covered policing and Black Lives Matter. We've talked about all the issues that are affecting people, healthcare, the rights of LGBT plus people in our communities, and having those critical discussions has let these people know in this district that I care about them and nothing else. And my intention in running for this office is to continue the service and care that I've dedicated my life to.
Dan Ugaste.
Thank you. Dan Ugaste, running for re-election in the 65th District. I'm the best candidate for this office and to be re-elected to this office because I, in fact, do care and look out for the best interests of the people of the state of Illinois without regard as to whether I'll be re-elected and without having to promise to make anyone supreme ruler of the state of Illinois. Everyone knows that if you take money from the Democratic Party and Speaker Madigan, you agree to two things. You agree to make him vote for him to be Speaker of the House and to vote for his rules that give him complete and utter control. So if you vote for the other candidate, unfortunately, you're voting for more of the status quo. There has been one party primarily in charge, with the exception of 4 years of one governor within this state over the last 20 years. And if people are happy with the direction that's going, with the constant cries over those 20 years for property tax relief, for more efficient government, for better human services, what my opponent is saying she supports, and I have no doubt in my mind, she honestly wants to deliver on those things. But if you don't address the spending problems of the state, if you don't ever fix anything, which the speaker does not want to do, it doesn't work for his interest and his power, then you can't ever provide all those services we need. DCFS has been having problems, as was brought up earlier, for years and years. And yet we aren't taking the necessary steps and the necessary funding to take care of it. And it's not because people don't want to, it's because we don't have the money to. It's because we don't address the problems that the state has with pension, backlog of bills, and things of that nature in order to take care of these problems. I want to take care of these problems as much as the next person, but you can't do it by increasing taxes and constantly chasing people and business out of the state. It was a great state. It's still a very good state. It still has so much going for it. But if you look, when people, the population around our borders, I mean right on our borders, is expanding. Businesses are locating there. They want to take advantage of what Illinois has to offer. They just don't want to have to deal with our problems. So I am the break from the status quo. People who are willing to take hard votes and look at hard issues such as me are the type of people you want in office that don't look to see just whether they're going to be reelected the next term. I didn't run for office because I needed a job. I didn't need a source of income from my family. I didn't need health care insurance. I'm not taking a pension. I haven't accepted one dime of an increase. I've turned all that money back into the state of Illinois, and I don't take the health care benefits from the state. I'm fortunate that I don't have to, but I did this because I wanted to help the people of the state of Illinois. I had a business, or I have a business outside of this. I have a job. I didn't need to do this. I'm doing this to help the people of the state, and that's why I'm the best candidate for this.
That concludes today's interview. I want to thank all the candidates for their time and their participation. Good luck on your campaigns. The election's November 3. Early voting begins September 24th. That includes mail-in voting this year. We encourage all voters to research the candidates and issues in all the races and to make use of the Daily Herald and dailyherald.com and Shaw Media and shawlocal.com as part of that research. Ultimately, informed voting is one of the most sacred obligations a citizen has if a democracy is to flourish. Thank you for watching and stay